but we can start with the Black Crowes.
Uh, I would say it's probably the most, next to the Stones, the most rock and roll room I've ever been in. Like, I got in a fist fight with Chris, for instance. It was intense, very, very intense. We did have money to spend time to make it really great. If I'm not saying the albums are great, I'm just saying that we had time to make them as great, what we thought was great.
I'll say they're great.
That way, at the time. And that was like a lot of really hard work and a lot of time. Every amplifier was, look, the same thing I said earlier about when we made those Jellyfish records and all that kind of stuff. We sweated over everything. Is it a Everready battery or a such and such battery in the guitar pedal? Does this guitar chord sound better than that guitar chord? Oh, we'll turn the guitar chord around. Oh, it sounds better that way. Okay. Same thing in the patch bay, every patch bay chord. Running wires underneath the door is supposed to go in through the patch bay. I mean, we just did everything we could do to make it the best we thought it could be. And, really great microphones, Telefunken 251s on the tom-toms. Which I look at it now, I'm like, what was I thinking? Putting that kind of microphone on the tom-toms. Like, are you on high? But, KM54s, KM56s, like the really great Neumann microphones that kind of just can put it almost anywhere and it works. They're so good. That Magic console, at Sound City was one of the Magic most. I would say the 3 or 4 Magic consoles I've worked on in my life, it was one of them.
Yeah.
Where it just had it. But they were tough to work with, really, really tough. I think what sort of sums up how, when I say it was rock and roll, I remember one day I made a suggestion about an arrangement. And they tried it and they're like, nah, we don't like the idea. Like, okay, cool. So I walk off and do something else. I don't remember what it was. And the next thing you know, my assistant says, hey, there's a call from the Black Crowes manager. Okay, so I get on the phone. And as I pick up the phone, the way Sound City was set up, right next to the control room was like a little ISO booth. And I look over and they're in the ISO booth, the Black Crowes. And the manager's like, so I just heard that you made an arrangement thing and they're not happy about it. I said, yeah, but I told them that, it was just an idea. We don't have to do it. They go, just a minute. So guys, he says it was just an idea, but I can see them. They're on the call right next to on the other side of the class. I'm like, this can't be happening. And I'll never forget that.
Wow.
And that's how they were. But again, it's kind of what made them what they were.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you hear very similar stories about Oasis. Same, both
yes.
About the brothers, but also about the sort of like their band was an insular force, and it was weird for them that people would think they would know better sometimes.
Well, the Black Crowes opened for a show that I went to that Oasis did, and it was at an amphitheater. I'll never forget it. And after the show, we're all backstage. Everyone's hanging out, drinking, whatever, partying. And the security guard comes in. He goes, guys, we're just on the other side at midnight. We got to close this down. And he got up. Liam got up and he looked at the guard. He goes, let me explain something to you. You and your little bodyguards are going to go to the store and buy some sleeping bags because we'll tell you when the show's over. Okay? Get out. That's rock and roll.
Yeah. There's a documentary here about Rockfield, this studio that was on the BBC last week, and they're interviewing those guys. And one of the things that was really great was them saying that they were just as proud of how good they were at going to the pub as they were of being a good band. Because it was life. It was not a band. It was not a day job. It was 100% of who they were.
Well, I think if we're honest with each other, it's what I always say about what we do. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the other woman. If you're, from my standpoint as a guy, this is the other woman, and it's a lifestyle. And I think about it all the time.
Well,
and I can't wait to try things. Like, what about this? What about that?
So let's talk about that in the context of the Black Crows, because I mean, you're working with them, you're having fistfights with them. They're calling their manager because you wanted to try an arrangement change. They're really difficult, but obviously you think you're making a really good record at the same time. But that doesn't sound like the sort of experience you'd want to repeat. But you made 3 records, 4 records. I mean, you kept coming back and they kept coming back to you. So what do you attribute to them coming back to you, and why did you continue to take the gigs?
So I remember on one of the records, they came with the songs, and I didn't think the songs were exactly right. And I remember calling Glenn Johns, and I said, Glenn, I explained the whole situation. He said, you think this is unique? I said, yeah, it's kind of, goes, no. When the Who had done Pinball Wizard, they were so big at the time. They were so on their game. And the guitar player of the Who walked into the control room where I was working on whatever record he was working on. He said, I got the demos. I want you to hear them. And we're going to do Pinball Wizard #2. And he popped the cassette in at the time. And Glenn said he listened to it. And it stopped, and the guitar player looked at him and said, what do you think? And he goes, rubbish. You think that those are songs for your next record? Get out. And this is like, what are you talking about? You're talking about like a rock star, beyond a rock star, at the top of his game.
Yeah.
Right?
And a feisty one at
and
that,
he said,
you know.
That's correct. And he came back 2 months later with what became Who's Next. That would have never happened had Glenn not threw him out of the control room. So the point of that is that there is that point where you have to take that chance and hope that you're right and stand up at all costs. No, that's not right. That's not how it goes. That's not how it should be. This is what I think, and I'm unmovable. And you go and do that a few times, but sometimes you have to do that.
So what was the outcome of that, though? So basically, they came to you and said, we're going to make another record, and here are the songs. And you said, well, these songs are not happening.
They come back with new songs.
Right.
One of two things happens. They either come back with new songs or they go to someone that says yes.
Yeah, because they'll always find someone to say yes, especially a band that level at that time. But it really says something that they...
And I could tell that story, but I don't think I should.
But they wanted to work with you enough that they would actually say, okay, let's go. I mean, because that's pretty huge. Going from, like, we don't want an arrangement change from this guy to, I guess our songs aren't up to snuff. I mean, that's huge. And was it that respect that made you think, like, even though this is going to be difficult, I want to do it again?
You know, I think that here's how I'm going to answer that. If I had any criticism of current status right now, of where we're at as a business, is I think sometimes people don't realize, don't appreciate chemistry. Okay, let me fix it.
Sorry, man.
No, it's no big deal. It's just push a button here. I think sometimes people don't realize, is it on?
Yep.
I think sometimes don't appreciate or realize how important and significant chemistry is. And if you look at some of the classic artists that have lasted the test of time, a lot of them work with the same person. Because they find that for whatever reason, love, hate, whatever it is, somehow when you put those things together, X comes out. And unfortunately now, I think a lot of artists, because again, when you're a great record producer, the downside of that is it's sort of a thankless job because no one really knows actually what you're doing. If you're really good, because you don't make it about yourself. You're just keeping the session on target. It's just going. Everyone's happy. You're making the changes. It's working. You're doing your thing, and it works. So then they think, oh, well, he didn't do anything.
Right.
Well, no, you just didn't realize what he was doing because he was good. He didn't make it about himself, right? We're not the artist. They're the artist. They're what is what's magic. We're just literally the vessel to get it through. And so I think with them, they understood that. And somehow, even though maybe we don't think he's cool, maybe we don't think he's this, maybe we don't think he's that, whatever the complaints were, it somehow was working. and they understood that.
Right.
And that's a little bit of a street thinking. You know, it's a little bit of street thinking, and the extremely, extremely a certain kind of arrogance doesn't understand or appreciate.